to Media Melanie Talks TV. I'm Melanie, and today I'm back to talk about Bad Sisters on Apple TV+, Season 2, Episode 6, Who by Water. First of all, there are only a pair of episodes left in this season. We are getting a total of 8 for Season 2, which means there's not a lot of time left to wrap up the story. We are in the home stretch. And I think the placement of this episode is very strategic because low-key, Ian has definitely seemed sus from episode 1. At first I thought, okay, maybe Grace ended up killing Ian and that's why Ian disappeared. But no, something that came up in the comments of my video last week is that perhaps Ian is actually this Black Widow type of predator, preying on grieving women and potentially a teenager. That's not something that popped into my head right away. I never want the first place my mind goes to be like, oh yeah, this guy is preying on teenagers, which is very, very creepy. Although, given the storyline with Blonde this season, that hidden phone we saw in one of the first episodes, the fact that Blonde is very upset about something, and now that Angelica is also saying that Ian can't be trusted, I'm starting to turn a corner on Angelica. Could she have actually been helping and letting Grace know there was something going on with Blonde? Maybe Blonde went to Angelica with what was happening in her house, and that's why Angelica has taken this role of making a safe spot for Blonde, calling social services, perhaps less because of Eva and the care she's taking of her niece, but more because she knows there is something going on with her stepdad, which I really hope it does not go that direction because I never like to see a teenager having to undergo that sort of abuse or trauma. So I am leaning towards Ian being this predator and preying on the grieving women based on the fact we know Ian met Grace online first through this bereavement group, that he had lost a sister in Canada, which I'm starting to think is a backstory. I think he is targeting these groups, finding a woman he can latch onto, and then going for it, going in for the marriage. And at first I thought to myself, wow, what a hot rebound for Grace. This guy seems like he's got it all. He cares about her, doesn't seem to mind that Grace was sleep choking him back at the start of the season. But I went from thinking that Ian was the body in the trunk because he was too much of a liability knowing what Grace did to JP, to now thinking perhaps Ian is the one who is behind all of this. What if Grace was coming back from Angelica's house, as Houlihan suspected? She was not actually giving her the money, that Grace was hiding money from Ian because she figured out Ian was trying to go after her, get all the money that she had, and that he was the bad guy. What if Angelica was trying to do the right thing and Ian was actually the one to run Grace off the road? Where did he go for that period of time after he left? What was he up to? Was he getting his scheme together and then blackmailing Grace for the money? I am starting to think that Grace was hiding the money from Ian. I don't necessarily think that Angelica was blackmailing her. I do think Angelica's attempt to get the $200 for the window for her center was completely a red herring to steer us away from Ian. Before Angelica went overboard, she did make that comment. She was about to elaborate on why Ian cannot be trusted. What if he has targeted multiple bereavement groups? What if Angelica did a little investigating of her own and figured out, hey, this guy has done this before, and she was actually looking out for Grace and only tried to get the information about JP out of her because she was genuinely concerned that this guy was coming after her and her family. And it would make a lot more sense as to why Ian is now going after Eva, because she is clearly in charge of Grace's estate. Something else that came up in this episode regarding Ian was when BB was talking about the fact that Ian had a random person as his best man at the wedding. Some random guy he met at a bereavement group. The bereavement group seems to be front and center for all of this. So Could Ian be this guy who's traveling from continent to continent? Could he have been living in Canada and that's where he lost his sister? I'm starting to think the sister might not even exist and it is just completely a cover story. It would be very smart writing for Sharon Horgan to make Ian, this very attractive guy, into this predator because we did not necessarily suspect him at first. Another little breadcrumb was when Ian went to help the sisters and erase that footage from the marina. He went into the woman's home, helped with her radiator, etc. But the comment the woman made about him being a serial killer and being a very attractive one at that, I don't think that that was an accident. What if Ian is actually a serial killer and not only is he going after these grieving women for money, but also ends up killing them and then moving on to his next victim? That would track if indeed he was the one to run Grace off of the road. So Ian, I see you, buddy. I see what you're doing. The sisters see you. BB sees you. She came over to even talk to you about who the heck actually are you. Houlihan sees you, Ian. Houlihan knows what's going on. And even though Loftus is doubting her, she knows that there is something happening with Ian. Now, Houlihan is not my favorite character. She really has been a dog with a bone. She's a little bit smug, a little bit cocky. She's new to the job, and I don't necessarily want to see her do a victory lap once she actually does get to the crux of this case and solve the mystery, but I do think it's coming, unless Houlihan becomes too much of a liability and she ends up being the one in the trunk. Someone else had mentioned, what if it's not even a body in the trunk in the first place? I do recall seeing it lurch or move back in that opening scene of episode 1 of season 2. So I do think it is a body. If it is not Ian, if it is not Angelica, it could be Houlihan. And again, it could be Roger. That's another person who's been just on the outskirts enough of this season where the light is not shining on him as a suspect. But after he sang that karaoke last week, I don't know, something about the look in his eye is not sitting right. So Roger could be a bad guy or he could end up being the one in the trunk. We've only got a couple episodes left to figure it all out at this point, so we will find out soon indeed. A big question I had about this episode too regarding Ian was, why is he so motivated to help the sisters cover up their crime? Could it be because Angelica somehow knew that he was involved in this and he just doesn't want them looking any further into him or his past? Because Houlihan had come over, picked up that piece of paper. Ian was working on the paperwork for Grace's estate and whatnot. So I think he's just trying to shift focus away from him. But Eva was the one who gave the motive for the sisters already. So wouldn't it also make sense if he was involved for him to actually shift focus to the sisters to take the blame away from him? Is he just being this good guy who's trying to help because he does want to get closer to Eva, get some of that money, gain control of Grace's estate? And then is he going to take out Eva just like he potentially did to Grace? Angelica. Is she alive? We saw her floating in the ocean, face up, not face down. She did have that life jacket on, as I mentioned in the last video, and I assumed she was probably dead. Yes, there was a slight chance, okay, she had the life jacket on. Perhaps she did survive. There was a good deal of blood, though, on the boat, which also I questioned, why are the sisters not cleaning up the blood? Surely they would have seen it there, unless they were just in such a chaotic state of mind after everything that happened. Emotions and tensions were running high, and they just didn't notice. If it's me, and I took somebody's boat out without permission and a body went overboard, I'm pretty sure I'm looking around and cleaning up the crime scene. So that was kind of a miss. And then to go back and clean it, and then for Ian to tell BB to go back and take a look at Angelica's car, just as Houlihan's there. I do wonder if that was maybe intentional because he knew the car was going to get found and he does want the sisters implicated. I just am not quite sure exactly what is going on with Ian Reilly. In fact, what if Ian is not even his real name? Ian should be worried too, because if Angelica does literally resurface on the shore and she comes clean to the authorities, maybe she won't actually throw the sisters under the bus. Maybe she will realize, hey, this was an accident, and maybe she will somehow implicate Ian in all of it. And it does seem like we will finally learn exactly what nefarious motives Ian has within these last 2 episodes. Unless we get a big twist like we did in season 1, and perhaps somehow Roger is behind all of this. I am still not putting that past him. But I keep going back to Ian when he directly says to Eva that he is not in this with his feelings with her. It's not some kind of a grieving thing. He's in it for Eva and Blonde. He directly says this, and that makes me think it has got to be a contradiction. He is pushing so hard to get involved with Eva. And as she said, she'd rather die an old maid than hurt her niece, than hurt her sisters. Clearly, the sisters could see what's going on. They're putting the pieces together. BB saw them together. And the look that Ian shot across the street to BB when I assume that he did see her there, Ian, the sisters are coming for you, buddy. You gotta watch out, man. And for BB to confront him directly and say, who are you? Why did you have nobody at the wedding? The pieces are starting to come together. And can I just say, these sisters need to stop doing things that are drawing attention to themselves. Granted, they haven't technically done anything wrong. Yes, they did help cover up JP's death. Yes, Angelica accidentally went overboard on their boat and they covered it up, but they haven't actually directly committed any crimes. However, given that Eva did give the investigators some fuel for a motive, she needs to stop Googling things. Please stop looking for articles on bodies that have washed up, because once forensic goes through your phone and sees the Google searches, it's gonna make you look even more guilty. And I've got to think there is probably more than one camera that we are aware of that shot the footage of the sisters at the marina. And where's the guy who owns this damn boat? What's he gonna do when he comes back and there's police tape, Garda tape all over his boat because it is now actually a crime scene? If Angelica does also make it ashore, who is going to discover her? And why did they throw her phone in the marina water? They can obviously track it. They will track it there. Although I guess now that they have the car there, it gives more credence to potentially where Angelica's location is, and then her body washing up. The pieces really will start to come together. We've got the car, we've got her body, dead or alive, TBD. We've got her phone there. There is potentially some footage that will end up coming out that Ian was not able to get to. And was Ian covering something else up? Could there have been something else on that video footage that he doesn't want somebody to see? Probably not. I'm not sure exactly what that would be, but you cannot rule anything out when it comes to Ian, because very clearly he has some ulterior motives and he's emerging to be the bad guy this season, similar to how JP was in season 1, except the opposite, because you're not suspecting him. He's very attractive, well liked by everybody, especially Eva. So we weren't really thinking clearly. Right off the bat, as I said before, I'm thinking this is great, a hot rebound for Grace. But those vibes do not necessarily match the good guy persona. I also have one random question. What is up with the Irish swimming in the sea in the middle of winter? Obviously, this is a thing. I live in San Diego. The ocean is very cold this time of year. There's surfers in it, but I don't know. I'm not going out for a cold swim. Is this something the Irish do to stay young, rejuvenated, and healthy? Should I be going into the sea in the winter and swimming? Everybody is at this swimming hole in the community, and I just want to know more about the Irish swimming during the winter. It's such an interesting thing, and the swimming part makes me wonder, will Angelica's body wash up there at the swimming hole? Will it be alive or dead? I don't know. What if the sisters are swimming there? The body washes up. She's still partially alive. They wrap it up in that cow robe, which I believe belongs to Becca because we saw it earlier this season. They put it in the trunk, and that's why the body lurches, because she's not fully dead. Obviously, something is going to come with Angelica's body washing up. And who knows, maybe the swimming hole will end up being the location where it washes up, and that's why we see such a prominent focus on the swimming. And Joe ends up coming by. Another storyline that's going on, Becca's pregnancy. She, of course, had some bleeding, ends up going to the hospital, and she's okay. Luckily, she's fine. Joe ends up showing up a little bit later, and Eva accidentally lets the cat out of the bag that she's pregnant. And of course, he's wondering, is it mine? Is it Matt's? It's probably his, because we see that exchange between Becca and Matt where Becca says, hey, do you still want to come over? I'm pregnant. And I believe that is saying that she's pregnant with Joe's baby. That the timing of them being together doesn't necessarily match up with it being Matt's baby, but that makes me wonder. If Becca decides to keep the baby and her and Matt get back together, will he decide to raise it as his own? Or because we are seeing the dual IVF storyline with Bibi and Nora, could it go back to something I mentioned before where Becca ends up keeping the baby within the family as an adoption situation because maybe she's not ready to have it? Again, I cannot imagine giving a baby to a family member after carrying it for 9 months, but everybody has their own journey when it comes to parenthood. So it will be interesting to see how this ends up tying in and why they are going with this pregnancy storyline in the first place when it feels a little extraneous. Then there is the money situation. Back to that again. Of course, we had seen Loftus dig it up under the turtles, and it seemed as if he was going to use the money for his divorce proceedings so he could gain custody of his daughter, who is moving to Australia. However, it seems like he really dug deep in his conscience because he does end up admitting that he found the money, he puts it into evidence, and he does the right thing. So hopefully him finding that money and doing the right thing will be kind of a redemption arc, given that people thought he was pretty much a fool back in season 1 for having exhumed JP's body. So maybe Loftus will be the big hero of the day here in season 2. He uncovered the money. They need to go ahead and fingerprint that damn money to see whose fingerprints are on it. Now, it seems as though it will be just Grace's fingerprints, but maybe not. Maybe we will see an Angelica print or an Ian print. This money, though, it's going to come back into play. And because I do think there's some component of this where Ian is trying to get money out of grieving women, I do think Grace must have been hiding it from Ian. I think the blackmail thing with Angelica was just a huge red herring. And then, too, when Houlihan is at the crash site, she's investigating the skid marks, which are coming away from Angelica's house. She does notice the flowers that were left there by Angelica, and it says, I'm sorry on it. Is the I'm sorry because she was indeed somehow responsible for Grace's death? Or is the I'm sorry an apology because she's sorry for what her and Blonded were put through by Ian? Maybe Angelica does know the truth of it all. I'm not quite sure yet. And again, I keep circling back to Ian, but also the Roger of it all. Episode 6, coming next week on December 18th, is called How to Pick a Prick. The description reads, the sisters hunt for the truth after a shocking betrayal while Houlihan goes head-to-head with Loftus. What is the shocking betrayal? Are they going to uncover something with Ian? I'll tell you. The thumbnail for next week's episode is Roger. Could Roger be the big bad of it all? As much as I've talked about Ian in this video being a predator and whatnot, maybe he's just a predator. Maybe he's not a killer. Maybe they've been fooling us all along and Roger is behind this. He's been involved since season 1. He very clearly has an interest in the Garvey sisters. He's kind of scorned because he had a sister like Angelica who lied to him about stupid things like the bet at the racetrack we saw earlier in the season. We're made to feel bad for Roger because he's rejected. He was holding a flame for Grace and she was never interested. He kept a very big secret for Grace and was complicit in covering up JP's murder. So if we're going between Ian and Roger for the bad guy or the body in the trunk, how do you feel? I want you to comment and tell me, who do you think is the body in the trunk and who do you think is the big bad of it all that was behind Grace's death? Are we thinking Roger? Are we thinking Ian? Because these two men really are at the center of it all. And if we are looking at a big twist like in season 1, I might have to put my money on Roger, and Ian's just some prick. How to Pick a Prick, the title of the next episode. Are we talking about Grace picking Ian as her next husband, who's equally as much of a prick in kind of a different way than JP was? Or could the prick be Roger? Could it be because he was keeping the secret for Grace? Maybe he is behind the money in some way. Roger and Angelica live together, so Grace was coming back from Angelica's, but could it be because she was actually going to meet with Roger? Maybe Roger's been the one blackmailing her all along, and now he's trying to get with the sisters because maybe he wants a piece of this estate or something. I can't quite put my finger on it, but the fact that we have the next episode related to a prick and that the preview picture shows Roger, we might be getting the Roger reveal, you guys. So what is the shocking betrayal going to be? And why are Houlihan and Loftus getting into it? Is it over the money? Is it because Fergal just doesn't believe that the things she's investigating are true? Is it because he doesn't want to get beat by a rookie? She is very smug, so I can totally see that. As I've been saying this entire season, she is a dog with a bone, and I don't think she is going to let this go. And perhaps that will be her demise and downfall. And maybe it's not a dude in the trunk. Maybe it is Houlihan. But that would open up a whole can of worms for a season 3. That would be quite the major cliffhanger. If we're talking about cliffhangers, if there is a season 3, which by the way, we don't have renewal news yet, I would kind of assume there will be a season 3. If there is, and there is a cliffhanger, and we get the body reveal, how will that play into a 3rd season? It would make sense to keep Roger involved and have him play a big part in this because he's been around since season 1. He's somebody that we're familiar with that we weren't necessarily suspecting to even be playing a part in all of this until his sister Angelica entered the picture. What I really love about this show is they've done a great job creating this mystery. And because of that big twist in season 1 with the manner of JP's death, who did it, who was involved in covering it up, my expectation is very high for an equally good reveal. There are only 2 episodes left, so time is a ticking here for the Bad Sisters mystery. And circling back to where I started, because again, this was a very Ian-centric episode, could Ian be behind all of this? Could he end up being the body in the trunk? Is he preying on Blonde? Again, I hope that it does not go that way. We really didn't see any Blonde in this episode, so perhaps this is not related to Blonde. It is solely related to Grace and her relationships, and Grace's marriages have really been at the center of everything. It does make sense for it to be continuing, this cycle. Grace does not know how to pick him. She clearly did not do a good job picking JP. She suffered because of it. And now she finds this hot new rebound husband who she happens to meet at this online bereavement group, which, by the way, again, is pretty sus, and then ends up dead. Grace Garvey is the key to all of Bad Sisters. So if we are keeping that theme from season 1, then I would expect to see this all circle back to Grace's choice in men, especially given the title for next week, How to Pick a Prick. Only a couple episodes left of Bad Sisters here in season 2. Of course, I will be back to cover it. In the meantime, use that Apple subscription TV wisely and be sure you're watching Silo. We are also in a 2nd season of that. We have Steve Zahn introduced into the cast playing Solo. That is a great dark show if you do skew towards dystopian, post-apocalyptic, and there's also a pretty good mystery happening there. So if you're watching Silo, be sure to check out my coverage. And then I will be covering Dexter Original Sin, which is coming this week. In 2025, I'm looking ahead to Severance, The White Lotus. There are so many great shows coming, as I've been talking about. I will also be putting out a top 10 shows of 2024, along with Craig Elston, who I do a radio hit with each week on 97.3 on Fridays, where I share a streaming TV recommendation. We are both very into television, and I'm excited to be joined by someone who's equally as enthusiastic about all of the great TV we watched in 2024. So stay tuned for that. Be sure you hit that that subscribe button, drop a comment here, let me know what you think is happening with Bad Sisters and how you think it will end up resolving. Be sure to hit the like button. All of this really helps me on my content creation journey, and I just appreciate all of you being here to watch. So, thank you for tuning in. I'll be back again next week. Media Melanie, clicking off.